he came from a large family of Sandbridge, and he was ordinarily just a labourer. His father used to run the boat from South Sandbridge to North Sandbridge, towing people the other side, but he was a labourer. He was put into the Royal Scotch Fusiliers.
Right. And was he sent straight to the Far East, or did he serve in Europe? Or?
No, he was over here and they were training for overseas. Over here.
And was the Far East the first place he was sent to?
No. He was out in France when Dunkirk was on.
Oh,
he was
right.
Out there, and he got reported missing, but he turned up on one of the little boats that came in and landed on my doorstep.
Oh. Oh, wonderful. And was he ever a prisoner of war in Burma?
No. He went to Burma. No, he came back from Dunkirk, and he was over here for quite a time. He was made up to a sergeant, and then he was sent out to train the King's African Rifles.
Right.
So he was in Kenya for quite a time, training them to go into war.
And then when did he go to the Far East?
It must have been about the end, roughly the end part of 44.
And sadly he was killed in action, wasn't he?
They were off duty and they'd been in swimming and they were going back to camp when the Japs opened fire, and there was somebody injured, so he went back to get the injured soldier and he got caught.
Oh. And that was Burma, wasn't it?
And that was in Burma.
Have you ever been to Burma yourself?
Yes. Yes, I went about 18 years ago.
Did he get any medals that you've still got?
I have. Those I have found.
Do you know what each of them are?
One is a 1945 star, I think.
Yeah.
One is defence medal. One that he was out in Burma. Once he was at Dunkirk, I think. I can't remember.
No, but lots of medals. And did he ever get to hear Dame Vera Lynn? Because a lot of them did in Burma. Did he ever hear her in concert?
Well, no, I don't think so. But Vera Lynn's song is our song.
Oh.
Yours. When Stan used to write to me, or I wrote to him, we always signed it, yours.
Oh, how lovely. Yeah, how lovely.
We always signed it, yours.
Oh, bless. And what do you normally do on VJ Day? How do you commemorate it yourself, or what are your thoughts on the day?
I just think of all those boys that were out there, and they had a dreadful time, especially those prisoners of war boys. They had a dreadful time. I think of them. We don't seem to celebrate VJ Day like we do VE Day.
No, no.
They forget about them boys that were out there. I went out on a pilgrimage to Thailand. That was our first port of call, and we were taken to see the war cemetery, which was most beautifully kept. We stayed in the most gorgeous hotel, and we went all around, and it was Armistice Day that weekend, so we all gathered together, all foreign diplomats or whoever they were, and the children the night before sang the 23rd Psalm in English.
Oh.
And then from there we went to Burma to visit the war graves there, and again they were beautifully kept, and we were all allowed to choose whatever we wanted on the stone, which was lovely.
Oh.
And it's something that I will remember all my life.
Oh.
My father, Jack Smith, gunner John Smith, was a private in Sunderland's Own, the 125 Anti-Tank Regiment. They were formed in 1939 from a TA regiment in the Royal Artillery, and my dad joined them in December 1939. On the 28th of October 1941, the regiment set sail again, once more heading for the Desert Campaign. They were in convoy via Halifax, Nova Scotia, Trinidad and Cape Town before disembarking in Bombay for 3 weeks acclimatisation. Finally, on the 23rd of January 1942, they were off again on an old liner, the Empress of Asia, in a small convoy heading for Singapore. Approaching the island on the 5th of February 1942, they were close enough to see black smoke rising above the city from bombing raids, and soon came to the attention of waves of Japanese planes. One of the accompanying ships was hit and set on fire. The regiment and other troops on board had set up their light infantry weapons and managed to fight off waves of bombers without being hit before a single plane dropped a bomb which found its mark, starting a large fire. More bombers appeared, further hits were suffered, and soon the ship was a blazing wreck. At approximately 1 p.m, the order was given to abandon ship. A large contingent, about 1,800 men, managed to jump down from the stern of the ship onto the escort destroyer which came alongside to assist. The rest, including my dad, jumped over the side. The wreck was still being bombed and ammunition on board was exploding, so my dad, a very strong swimmer, thought his best chance was to swim to the island some miles distant. This he set off to do, but on the way was spotted by an American PT boat which threw him a life raft. He returned to the burning wreck to pick up some more survivors, and they paddled off to Singapore. Luckily, not long after, they were rescued by boats that had come out from the island to help and transferred to safety ashore. And on the 15th of February, Singapore's GOC, General Percival, surrendered the island. The Japanese marched into Singapore on the morning of the 16th, and on the 17th of February, the regiment marched to Changi Jail to begin 3.5 years of captivity. On April the 3rd, the regiment, minus those too sick to be moved, marched to River Valley Camp in Singapore. From here they worked on clearing up bomb damage. About September-October 1942, the regiment was split up. One party went to Japan, and 3 other groups, one including my dad, went up country to begin work on the Burma-Siam Railway. The first part of the journey for the up-country teams was 4 days by train to Ban Pong. This was undertaken in covered steel railway trucks, each packed with 30 plus men. Due in no small part to the regimental camaraderie and the lads' support for each other, he somehow managed to survive the harsh conditions that life as a Japanese POW entailed. For 3.5 years they were subject to exhausting work, starvation, tropical diseases and random savage beatings. If the war had gone on much longer, the POWs feared that they would have been killed by the Japanese guards. Just before the end, they were ordered to dig large pits or trenches, which they found out later could have been their own graves. The atomic bombs brought a swift end to the hostilities, and my dad was repatriated with what was left of the regiment in Thailand around VJ Day. Firm, believable news eventually came in September 1944, following the sinking of a Hell ship bound for Japan carrying POWs. It was torpedoed and sunk by an American submarine. Nearly 1,200 POWs were killed, but one of the survivors, Charlie Perry, was from the 125 Regiment. He carried the news of those he thought still alive, including my dad, back to anxious families in Sunderland.
James Gowes, 2nd Battalion Royal Scots. My father ran away from quite an unhappy home background to join the 2nd Battalion Royal Scots in Dundee on the 2nd of January 1935. As he was only 16 at the time, he had to lie about his age to get in, and saying he was actually 18. He was given the army number 3054415 and started, of course, as a private, being the lowest rank. But when he left the service on the 1st of January 1957, after 22 years with the colour, he was then a sergeant. As for the Second World War itself, my father was actually stationed in Hong Kong as a signaller with the 2nd Battalion Royal Scots when war with Germany was declared, and subsequently he fought in the horrific Battle of Hong Kong, culminating in the surrender of the colony on Christmas Day, or Black Christmas as it was called, 1941. Consequently, he was a Far East prisoner of war, a FIPO, for most of the war until 1945, around about September 1945. According to his liberation questionnaire, my father was captured on Christmas Day at Wong Nai Chung Gap. He was then held in Sham Shui Po prison camp in Hong Kong from probably about late December 1941 until liberation in September 1942. In September 1942, along with 1,800 or so other prisoners, he was being sent to Japan on the unmarked freighter Lisbon Maru when it was torpedoed by an American submarine, the Grouper. It wasn't showing any markings. They had no idea that it was carrying prisoners of war, so as far as they were concerned, and justifiably so, they felt it was just a freighter, so it was torpedoed. After the war, like all the other servicemen, my father was awarded various medals for what he'd taken part in. He had the 39-45 Star, the Pacific Star, the Defence Medal, the War Medal, and because he was a regular soldier, because he joined up and he'd been in the army for 22 years or so, he had the Long Service and Good Conduct Medal as well. Another thing I think we learned as a whole family came probably from the years of starvation that my father endured, and that was to appreciate the value and the importance of food in particular, and not to let it go to waste. I still today hate seeing food just being left or thrown out, thinking back and knowing that my father would have been starving and he would have witnessed people actually starving to death for one reason or another. So it's quite a sort of sobering thought when people sort of say, "Oh, I could never eat such and such a thing," and I sort of think, well, if you were hungry enough, you'd probably be glad of it.